Hi guys, welcome MCVI. Today we're going to talk about the evolution of the throw up. So we're going to look into the next stage after tags. All right, so it all started in the early 1970s. Sorry, it's my cat hitting my computer. So in about 1973, and this is still happening in New York. So at the time, people are like Tacky 183 and a bunch of his friends are writing their names with one color all over the place. So this is on the walls, and then it progresses to subway trains, inside the train, outside the train. So they're still one color, they're still using probably markers, sometimes spray paint, and they're pretty small. So, but what starts happening in 1973 is this guy named Lonnie Wood, and he goes by the name Phase 2. And he calls himself Phase 2 instead of Phase 1 because it's like the next level after tags. It's the new birth of sort of graffiti, kind of as we know it. So in graffiti history, he's known as the guy that started bubble letters and bubble writing. So this style became known as softies or throw ups. And the thing about Phase 2 is he was really interconnected in the hip hop community. So he belonged to a hip hop group called Zulu Nation. So graffiti didn't necessarily start out of hip hop, but because of Phase 2 and his association with the hip hop culture, that's sort of where that idea where, graffiti and hip hop kind of go together. And there's a lot of things that sort of correspond between the two mediums of expression, and they do have a lot of stuff in common. So his whole idea for Zulu Nation and the whole group was to provide peace and love and unity and having fun. And that kind of went a lot with his types of letters that he did. So he was the first guy that went from writing tags from a single color to start to do big pieces of works in bubble letters. And his stuff was mostly on subway trains, and they were pretty large. Now, the cool thing about a lot of these artists that we're talking about, because this is still an art form that's still growing, it's still happening before our eyes, is that a lot of these people are still alive and we can connect with them and see them. And now, unfortunately, Phase 2 just passed away in December of 2019. So there's a lot of documentaries about what he's done and what he said. So there is a link on YouTube. There's lots of videos, but one of my favorite ones is this one here, and I did link it to our Google Classroom if you want to have a look and just see what Phase 2 says in his own words and how he approached his graffiti. So how did this happen, and why did this happen? How did it go from basic tags to something like a throw up? And the biggest thing was spray paint. So in 1949, Ed Seymour invented spray paint. So this had been around for a few decades by the time, graffiti started to grow. And one of the most famous types of spray paint was Red Devil. And I mean, this was meant for household things like painting refrigerators, painting bicycles, metal stuff. Now, the idea, though, that really changed graffiti to go from a tag to throw up is the caps. And graffiti artists discovered that you could take the cap off of something like an oven cleaner that, is an aerosol spray that sprays in your oven, but it sprays wide spray, is that you could take the cap off of that and put it onto one of the spray paints, and all of a sudden then you have something called a fat cap, or like a wide spray. So that means that you could cover a huge amount of area in a short amount of time. So spray paint is huge for this. So this is why they were able to spray big, huge pieces in color quickly without getting caught. So you end up with colorful bubble sort of letters that have these fill on the inside and an outline and some designs, but this is sort of how it all started. Okay, so that's sort of the introduction to throw ups, but so let's watch the next video about sort of the throw up terminology.